What's up guys, Hownish here, and today we've got a quick news update from Bungie in the form of This Week at Bungie. It's not going to be a super long one, but there is some pretty important stuff in here. So Bungie talk about E3 very briefly and Forsaken. They make some corrections about some Faction Rally information. We've also got the return date for the Faction Rally, which will actually be next week. They give us details though about new exotic armor updates that they'll be doing, some reworks, just like we saw in the May update. There'll be more of these coming next month. Some other support stuff about the Fighting Lion and the Iron Ornament bundle from this week, and a few other things to round up. So let's keep it nice and simple and jump straight into it. First up, Bungie actually provided this kind of provocative image right here of 3 Guardians hanging around Cade 6. Of course, last week they announced Forsaken, and they start by saying everyone is back from E3, and we're heads down working hard on Forsaken. Several thousand players already got to play Gambit, and we're extremely excited for more of you to play it, both at Guardian Con and when Forsaken releases on September the 4th. Meanwhile, the Iron Banner rages on. You have the rest of the week to rank up with the Lord Saladin and earn the Season 3 ornaments for your gear. Make sure that you turn everything in before reset on June 26th at 10 AM, because next week we will have the return of the Faction Rallies. That's rolled around pretty quick. That'll be Tuesday, June the 26th at 10 AM PDT, and of course that runs through until the following weekly reset. Bungie do say in a previous This Week at Bungie, we told you that the winners offering weapons would be added to the event reward pool after the first event. That was actually incorrect for Season 3, which will operate differently than past seasons. During this season, the factions will continue to feature their original winners offerings for all 3 events. So that's a bit of confirmation right there. Any of the featured winners offering weapons will not actually be added to the reward pool for faction rallies after the first event. So essentially, if a weapon isn't won, correct me if I'm wrong, but it will never be obtainable. So that's pretty interesting, but they finish by saying you can make it to rank 50 with your faction of choice during the first event, but if you didn't, you can pick it up where you left off by pledging to them again. So faction rally next week on the weekly reset. I'll keep you guys posted with any additional details. But next they talk about the exotic armor update that we'll be seeing, and this comes with update 1.2.3 arriving on the 17th of July. Just to briefly reiterate, this is also when the Solstice of Heroes event will go live in Destiny 2. We don't have too many details about it just yet, but Scott Taylor from Bungie did hint when talking about Forsaken that we may actually see some useful gear in there, because he spoke about gear relevance moving between faction rallies in Season 3, the summer event, and the Forsaken DLC. But otherwise we'll have to wait for more details. One thing we will be seeing though are more exotic armor sandbox changes. And there are a few more than what we saw last time, so there will be 3 per class. They point out anything below is in addition to any existing benefits that exotic armor already provides. So we'll start out with the Hunter. We have the Lucky Raspberry, increased chance to fully recharge your Arc Bolt grenade on Arc Bolt grenade hits. But now it will guarantee a recharge on getting a full chain that hits 4 targets. And they say while just about everybody could appreciate the theoretically infinite grenades that Lucky Raspberry could generate, its purely random nature made people shy away from it. With this change, your input will now affect the outcome, so plan your throws accordingly. So essentially making that a bit more predictable. If you use it in the right situation where you know you're going to get that full chain of, 4 kind of target hits, you're definitely going to get that grenade back, which is always nice. For the Stompies, they've increased the benefits when using Strafe Jump and Triple Jump. They say that the usage rate for these in the Crucible was fairly good, but since it mostly affected High Jump, people were somewhat pigeonholed if they wanted to change up their air game, so the other double jump variants were tweaked to have more impact. So essentially Stompies are just getting better at what they currently do, but for the young Ahamkara Spine they've removed the marking functionality, and they've improved the Trip Mine Grenade's blast radius and throw speed, and made it so your Trip Mine Grenades are harder to destroy. So basically they become quite a bit more reliable. On top of this though, Solar Ability hits now grant some Trip Mine Grenade energy. They say that while useful in some circumstances such as Crucible, the marking functionality did not have much merit in PvE, so we removed it to head in a better direction. Now your Trip Mine Grenades are punchier, and you get access to them faster. So pretty interesting right there. Basically improved the performance of the grenade all around and created additional ways to cool that grenade down. Next though we have the Titan. So for the ACDO feedback fence, it will now grant the Fury Conductor stacks on melee hits instead of kills. So you can actually proc that by just hitting enemies, not making kills on them. Fury Conductors will now grant stacking melee damage resistance, and these changes were mostly aimed at making Fury Conductors better in PvE encounters. While the feedback fence could protect you from hordes of Thrall by keeping them staggered, it just wasn't that much use against something like a Hive Knight wielding a sword. The changes also make this exotic better in the Crucible, but the solution of just shooting opponents still works. So that sounds promising, I'll be curious to try it out. For the Doomfang Pauldrons though, avoid melee kills now grant more super energy, and shield throw hits will now extend the duration of the super. Titans have a lot of things that help with punching things. To differentiate this one from the rest of the herd, we've increased the impact that this exotic has on your super and how you use it. So it's essentially a bit more rewarding, not requiring the kills anymore, only requiring hits, and being more effective at actually cooling down those supers. For Doom Marchers though, they've reduced the time to activate linear actuators while you're sprinting to 1.5 seconds, down from 5 seconds, so it will activate much quicker. They've increased the damage of the chain lightning effect by plus 70% in PvP and plus 440% in PvE, so that's a pretty good buff. While the lightning effect on Doom Marchers was novel, the time needed to start it up and its fairly low impact led to many players simply seeing these as the sprint pants, so we've made that lightning much more deadly and frequent. So that sounds like a pretty good buff, we'll have to see how it plays out. Finally though, we do have the Warlock, and for the Crown of Tempest, they've collapsed the total number of stacks of Conduction Tines to 3 with the same total effect, and each stack of Conduction Tines lowers the upkeep cost of Stormtrance. Nezarec Sin and this exotic were quite similar, so we pushed harder on this exotic for Stormcallers who want to invest heavily in ability use. Warlocks don't have that many exotics that modify their supers, and not receiving the full benefit of Conduction Tines during Stormtrance was a little disheartening, so we added the benefit during the super's duration to alleviate that. For the Karnstein Armlets, they've removed the melee hit effects for resilience, mobility, and target highlighting, but melee kills will now instantly heal you, then grant continuous healing for 8 seconds. In this iteration of the Karnstein Armlets, we've simplified the exotic to be about death and healing. Previously, the effect was split between hits and kills, providing inconsistent experiences. While the effect is much more basic now, it should be more reliable and more effective in most situations. That 8 seconds of healing sounds pretty promising for sure, but then we have Starfire Protocol. Empowering Rift weapon damage hits now grant fusion grenade energy by 20%. Much as with the Lunafaction boots, we felt like giving a bonus to players who decide to go with the offensive Empowering Rift rather than playing it safe with the Healing Rift. Basically, that's how they want to give that bonus. So I think that's a pretty interesting one as well. Some of these definitely sound like positive changes, not necessarily the most flashy, although we'll really have to get our hands on them and get an idea of what they can do. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think though. Do you think these look like positive buffs? Do you think there are any other exotics that they should have been updating? Of course, we don't know if there will be more stuff that they work on inside of Forsaken as well, but as I said, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts below. Next though, they talk about some Halo stuff, funnily enough. So just in case you still use any of these, they say it's time to retire those old read-only forums. So these are the forums on halo.bungie.net. On June 28th at 10 AM PDT, that will be going offline forever, and this will also apply to any Bungie Pro video that you have uploaded on bungie.net. So if you still use any of those services, it's definitely worth taking a look at this article, which I will link down below. They say though that on the subject of the Lupa's Visage, which is the ornament for the Fighting Lion, this was featured in the Iron Ornament bundle. They will be working on a hotfix to resolve issues for affected players. So essentially you were able to pick this up and it would either not unlock on your account or it would vanish if you unlocked it and then removed it from the piece of gear. Bungie will have to keep us posted when the hotfix will be available, but just in case you purchase that or anything, Bungie will be looking to fix it. Of course, right now they've actually removed it from the Eververse store to mitigate the issue, but just worth noting, especially if you did actually purchase it. They do finish by saying that we'll be back next week with more info on update 1.2.3, of course, that midsummer update. Perhaps we'll get a bit of a reveal of the event, some of the other changes that we'll see. Of course, we're getting things like bounties, the prestige raid layers. There will be some other important changes as well, so stay tuned for those if you're interested. We do, of course, also have to get a lot more details about the Forsaken DLC. Of course, there are events later on in the summer, things like Gamescom, where they may want some of the more flashy reveals, new trailers potentially and stuff like that, pretty close to the release. But on top of this, Bungie have promised us developer commentary on the weapon slot systems, random roles, more information on the Masterworks, and there are a lot of other elements which I've spoken about in some other videos, reworking milestones, progression systems, questification in the game. I made a video today with some new details about the Forsaken DLC, some pretty cool stuff about how the campaign will work, the return of daily heroic missions, and Bungie wanted to add powerful gear drops to those missions as well. It looks like a lot of stuff is going to be changing in Forsaken, so if you missed any of that, definitely check out my video from earlier. I will link it down below and at the end of this video. But for now, that pretty much sums it up, guys. Faction Rallies next week on Tuesday. Let me know your thoughts on any of those exotic armor changes. But for now, if you have enjoyed the video or found it useful, a like is very much appreciated below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe to see a lot more D2 content. Also check out my sponsor Into the AM. They do some awesome clothing in their store, really cool hats, bandanas, hoodies and more. You can save 10% as well by using code Houndish. The link for that will be below if you want to check it out. But for now, I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you very soon.